started with a chain reaction of people losing control on an overpass headed southbound. They were going at least 60 to 80 miles an hour, said a man who was involved in the crash. It just kept happening, car after car. There's nothing you could really do about it. People should know better than to drive like that on the ice when it's 25 degrees here in Texas. An ongoing investigation now, one of the biggest massive accidents seen in over 20 years, according to a Fort Worth police officer. And they are going to go ahead and continue investigating the 100-vehicle pileup in Fort Worth that one state representative said could have been avoided. House impeachment managers concluded their case against Donald Trump yesterday, urging the Senate over 2 days to convict the former president for inciting the insurrectionists that attacked the U.S. Capitol, arguing Trump was responsible for the deadly January 6 riot, failed to stop the attackers, and showed no remorse afterwards. The Justice Department unsealed conspiracy charges against 5 people associated with the Proud Boys yesterday, in the latest and largest move against the far-right group's coordinated role in the insurrection last month. And the Justice Department is now making clear that a leader among the Oath Keepers paramilitary group who planned and led others in the U.S. Capitol siege to attempt to stop the Biden presidency believes she was responding to the call from then-President Trump himself. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she'll sponsor legislation to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the U.S. Capitol Police and other agencies that protected the Capitol during this deadly insurrection last month. Donald Trump's defense lawyers will make their case today why the former president is not guilty of inciting last month's deadly riot at the U.S. Capitol as the Senate races towards a final vote in his impeachment trial as soon as tomorrow. President Trump was sicker than publicly known with COVID-19 last year. According to a report from the New York Times, he and his medical team tried to downplay his condition. President Joe Biden will meet with a bipartisan group of mayors and governors today as he continues to push for approval of a $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief plan to bolster economic growth and help millions of unemployed workers. Facing criticism that he has not acted aggressively enough on reopening schools, the White House said it's aiming for a full reopening but will defer to science experts on how to achieve it in the middle of a pandemic. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, made a prediction that sounds like music to the ears. If you look at the projection, I would imagine by the time we get to April, he said, that'll be what I would call, for lack of better words, open season. President Biden said that the U.S. will have enough supply of the COVID-19 vaccine by the end of summer to inoculate 300 million Americans. The fired Minneapolis police officer who held his knee to George Floyd's neck agreed to plead guilty to third-degree murder days after his death, but then Attorney General William Barr had rejected the deal. Derek Chauvin and the 3 other officers involved were fired days after Floyd's death and later arrested. Chauvin faces second-degree murder charges and is scheduled for trial in March. The other 3 are charged with aiding and abetting and are to be tried together in the summer. President Biden has been very clear about restoring compassion and order to the country's immigration system, said the White House, and noted that a series of executive actions signed by him in the last few weeks are just the beginning. The U.S. government next week will begin to gradually process asylum seekers forced to wait in Mexico under a controversial program put in place by former President Trump, who launched this program in 2019 as part of a wide-ranging crackdown on the ability to seek asylum in the United States. Russia clashed with the United States and its Western allies over the nearly 7-year conflict in eastern Ukraine, and the UN has warned that the current fragile ceasefire risks being reversed if peace negotiations become deadlocked. It has been a long time since the Kremlin could claim a true soft power victory, but in the development of its coronavirus vaccine, it appears to have finally found one. The Sputnik, which was last week revealed to be 92% effective, was named after the satellite that Moscow sent into orbit in a world first in 1957. Russia and France urged Iran to show restraint after it started producing uranium metal in a new breach of limits laid out in Tehran's nuclear deal with world powers. Attackers killed 5 Afghan policemen escorting a UN convoy on the main highway heading east from Kabul before escaping, according to the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan. No one immediately claimed responsibility for this attack, but Afghanistan has seen a nationwide spike in bombings, targeted killings and violence on the battlefield as peace negotiations in Qatar between the Taliban and the Afghan government have stalled. Lebanon's former army chief told the lead investigator of last year's massive Beirut port blast today that he had recommended years before the explosion that tons of seized ammonium nitrate stored there be sold privately or sent back to importers. More than 2 million Yemeni children under the age of 5 are expected to endure acute malnutrition this year, according to 4 United Nations agencies urging stakeholders to end the years-long conflict that has brought the Arab world's poorest country to the brink of famine. Rape has occurred conclusively and without a doubt in Ethiopia's embattled Tigray region, according to the country's Minister for Women, in a rare government acknowledgement of the toll on civilians during 100 days of fighting. And the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo took over the chairmanship of the African Union this week. Experts believe the emergence of new coronavirus variations in Africa have contributed to an increase in the number of both cases and deaths reported in many countries on this continent. The number of COVID-19 cases in Eastern Europe has surpassed 10 million as countries across the region aim to increase vaccine procurements from multiple suppliers to accelerate inoculation programs. And top European Union officials urging member countries to swiftly submit plans for how they would use their share of the bloc's massive coronavirus recovery fund so that the sorely needed money can be released starting this summer. The coronavirus variant first found in the British region of Kent is a concern because it could undermine the protection given by vaccines against developing COVID-19. Australia's second most populous city of Melbourne will enter a 5-day snap coronavirus lockdown. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. The UN's top human rights body held an urgent session today to discuss the military coup in Myanmar, facing a call for the release of people arbitrarily detained, including civilian government leader Aung San Suu Kyi, and more action by UN officials to increase scrutiny of the country. The United Nations Security Council should consider imposing punitive sanctions, arms embargoes and travel bans on Myanmar because of the military coup there, according to the UN human rights investigator for the Southeast Asian country. Supporters of the ousted Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi clashed with police today as hundreds of thousands joined nationwide pro-democracy demonstrations in defiance of the junta's call to halt mass gatherings. And hundreds rally in the Nepalese capital for a women's right. Most of them were there to end the violence and discrimination against women and the scrapping of a proposed law that would restrict travel for many women. The protesters marching in the heart of Kathmandu chanted slogans demanding equality. A new visa scheme is offering millions of Hong Kongers a route to British citizenship. And China's space agency released 2 videos providing a close-up glimpse of Mars today, captured as its Tianwen-1 probe entered the red planet's orbit, saying the spacecraft was sending a Lunar New Year greeting to Earth today. The 2 clips, lasting just under a minute, were the first released by the China National Space Administration of the probe entering orbit. The U.S. has welcomed the ongoing efforts by India and China to de-escalate the situation in eastern Ladakh and said it would continue to monitor closely as both sides work towards a peaceful resolution. The process of disengagement between the 2 armies that began this week on both sides of the Pangong Tso has sparked a debate on microblogging platform Twitter, with many expressing contrasting opinions. India has not conceded any territory as a result of this agreement with China, according to the Ministry of Defense. But Congress leader Rahul Gandhi called Prime Minister Modi a coward who cannot stand up to the Chinese. While addressing a press conference from Congress headquarters in Delhi, he said the PM has not fulfilled the responsibility of protecting India's territory and has instead ceded territory to China. Hitting out at Prime Minister Modi on this issue of new farm laws, the Congress leader said the Prime Minister wants to clear the path for his friends by implementing the 3 legislations which will hit 40% of the people of the country who are associated with the agriculture business. From peaceful demonstration to violent rallies, from chakka jams to celebrity attention, the farmers' agitation against the 3 new agriculture laws has been a saga of many twists and turns that has captured both national as well as international attention. And the Supreme Court-appointed committee today held consultations with 12 farmer unions and peasants from 8 states. We do have, beginning Sunday, the Bharatiya Kisan Union leader who would be attending 7 farmers' meetings planned across Haryana, Maharashtra and Rajasthan to garner support for the ongoing stir against the new farm laws. The daily new COVID-19 cases have fallen below 10,000 for the 3rd time this month, and the celebrated MC Mary Kom will be seen in action for the first time since qualifying for the Olympic Games last year in March, when the veteran, along with 8 other Tokyo-bound boxers, compete in next month's Boxum International Tournament in Spain. And the Indian senior women's football team is all set for its first outing post-COVID-19 pandemic as it travels to Turkey. A desperate India have decided to go for the jugular by opting for a spicy turner against a well-prepared England side in the second test starting tomorrow. England's test captain said skipping the lucrative IPL auction for a third successive year was a very difficult decision. And we do have Pakistan playing 3 one-day internationals and 4 2020 internationals in South Africa in the month of April. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have in the news for you this morning on the 12th of February.